until I read this book. Welcome back, everybody, to the lore review that nobody asked for. I am working on getting my hands on Titanicus, which has been recommended to me a couple times. However, it has been out of print for quite some while, and, well, let's just say I can't afford the current market price. However, I did recently pick up Brutal Kunnin by Mike Brooks, and I gotta say, I was really pleasantly surprised. This has been a heavily recommended book to me by just general fans of the Warhammer series, and I think is considered one of the better works of fiction, and I can see why. A lot of the orc humor is genuinely funny, which I wasn't expecting, to be totally honest. And a lot of the sequences are both very inventive, interesting, and there's a lot of drama in it as well. As a small overview of the events of the book, our titular characters, the Ork Mechwa, I believe it is, run into another group of rival orcs orbiting the same planet that happens to be an Admech Forge World. And they get in a little tiff, a little tizzy, and they decide to compete to see who can basically kill most of the humans on the planet and get all of the best loot. Truly, truly a loot gremlin's dream. The main character is, I believe, a knob. I don't really know orc stuff that well, but it seems to be what his rank is, although it also kind of shifts a lot within the story. There are trials and tribulations, including, well, some unexpected things that I don't want to spoil here, but as it being an orc book, the orcs do eventually come out, I guess, victorious. It's kind of hard to say. The book reads a little bit like Burn After Reading, where a bunch of stuff happens for essentially no reason at all, but in an entertaining manner, and no lessons are learned by the end. I do want to touch on the Admech representation in this book, being the nerd that I am for gears and the weakness of flesh, but it was a little bit frustrating to read about the absolute ineptitude of the Admech leadership in this book. Essentially, the Forge is run by a high council of sorts, and the Magus Dominus, who is also the Fabricator General, absolutely just sucks. He is the total worst, being absolutely incapable of processing the illogical actions of orcs, even though they were essentially really predictable the entire time, and his other constituents weren't much better. There are exactly two awesome Admech characters in the book who also happen to be, well, two of the survivors. They are both shown their prowess in both the sort of theological and technical aspects of their faction's focus, as well as their combat prowess, easily taking down and matching up with opponents that might seem well out of their station. That is one thing I really liked about this book, is its illustration of even more kind of research-oriented tech priests and things like that being a fully functional and absolutely terrifying force in combat. And it really gives a lot of credence to the idea of these kind of like older hunched back dudes with canes walking onto the battlefield once you read in this book what they can actually do in those combat situations. And it actually did enrich that sort of tabletop experience for me and that immersion quite a bit more. As I mentioned before, the jokes are quite funny, and the orc scenes always give me a laugh because they're not just dumb, which I was really generally kind of worried about. That seems to be the way orcs are portrayed in a lot of more casual encounters that I've seen them in, but to get inside the mind of one was actually a very interesting experience because they seem to more just think about things quite a bit differently than us to a level that approximates stupidity but isn't really that. And there are quite a lot of scenes that simulate how a human intelligence might approach things. It's quite actually a joy to read, and the comedy is written competently. Now, this being an orc book, there is quite a bit of comedy, but it is still the Warhammer universe, and the fate of the Imperium at large is in stark contrast quite grim. A lot of bad stuff happens to the Yumis in this book, but while I enjoyed reading about it, I was still, again, frustrated by the general incompetence of our opposing force here. And it does kind of... It seems to be a little bit of a running gag that Admech suck at things. They're generally portrayed as... When they're villains, they're portrayed as incompetent egomaniacs, which is... I mean, they should at least be competent egomaniacs. But all gripes aside, I think this is a really nice book, especially if you're new to Warhammer. I don't think there's much context that you need, and it introduces a lot of concepts quite well. So I would say for beginner readers, this is a strong start, especially if you're not super interested in the evil Imperium of mankind and want something a little bit more just kind of fun and wacky. In terms of like lore accuracy and immersion, I'd give it like a 4 out of 5, just because, again, my personal gripes with how the Admech are handled. But overall, quite a solid read. I would definitely recommend it for people who are interested in orcs, as well as people who are interested in Admech, because again, there are those two characters who I think kind of outstrip my personal distaste of other portions of their appearance. And there are also a couple of interesting plot twists and things of that nature that I truly was not expecting. We're left with more questions than we have answers about the outcome of everything. And as the ending scene of Burn After Reading goes...
What did we learn, Palmer?
I don't know, sir.
I don't fucking know either. I guess we learned not to do it again.
Yes, sir.
I'm fucked if I know what we did.
Yes, sir. It's hard to say.
But anyway, that just about does it for this lore review. Overall, quite a good read, and I was very happy all the way through. Truly, truly a fun book. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like. It helps out the channel a lot. And if you're interested in learning more about Warhammer lore, more reviews, more things of that nature, make sure you stay subscribed so you don't miss a single video. And as always, I'll see you next time. Peace!